Right. Good evening. Welcome to part two of Daily News. I'll be talking about some business news as it relates to technology. Before I start this, I would like to let you know this is for review, information, and educational purposes. It's not to take the credit for the intellectual property that belongs to the publisher, which is, in this case, CNBC, and the author, reporter, or whatever his title is. In this case, it's Arjun Karpal, if I pronounce his name right. Now, let's get to the headline. US-China tech battle entering its prime time, and generative AI could be the next frontier. Okay. Now, just to give you some key points to keep in mind, as I minimize that. First of all, a hallmark of US-China tensions in the past few years has been the battle between the two nations for tech supremacy. The second one is that Washington has sought to cut off China from key technology like semiconductors, while China has looked to boost its self-sufficiency and wean itself off American technology. The third key point is that now analysts say that generative artificial intelligence and technology behind OpenAI's ChatGPT could be the next battleground between the two nations. And you can see a picture between Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and the Prime Minister or President of China, Chinese President Xi Jinping. And the caption reads, Chinese President Xi Jinping on the right, with Anthony Blinken on the left. Of course, on the other side, which would be the left. The U.S. has looked to cut China off from key technologies like advanced semiconductors over the past few years. The two sides are likely discussed tech tensions, but analysts said not much is likely to change, even with both sides to look to improve relations. Now, generative artificial intelligence, a technology that viral chat box ChatGPT is based on, could be the new battleground in the technology for tech supremacy between U.S. and China, according to one analyst. Despite the two nations seeking better relations after U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Chinese President Xi Jinping last week, analysts said the tech tensions will continue. Washington has sought to cut off China from key technology like semiconductor, while China has looked to boost its self-sufficiency and weed itself off of American technology, touting its domestic sectors. Well, the status quo isn't likely to change much on any front, from sanctions to business pressure. Abhishek Prakash, the CEO of Toronto-based advisory firm The Geopolitical Business, told CNBC via email. AI, which is seen as a critical technology by both nations, will likely be dragged into the battle between the two sides. AI in the crosshairs. Former President Donald Trump began a trade war with China, and technology was dragged in the middle. Washington's tactics so far have relied on restricting China's access to technologies it deems critical to such as semiconductors. An escalation occurred last year when the U.S. introduced sweeping rules aimed at cutting China off from major tools and components that make advanced chips and choking the country off from critical semiconductors. The move was seen potentially hobbling China's home group chip industry. The U.S. has also got allies to align on tough export rules of tech to China. Meanwhile, the U.S. has looked to boost its own domestic technology, including semiconductors, with funding such as $52 billion available via the CHIPS and Science Act. Washington's attention is now likely to turn generative AI. Quote, there will be likely be more attempts coming from Washington to target the development of China of some types of applications, and generative AI could be in the crosshairs in the coming year. Paul Trillo is the technology policy led at a consulting firm, Albright Stonebridge, told CNBC. It comes, quote, as the Biden administration determines that technologies could benefit both China's military modernization and which could boost Chinese companies' ability to make breakthroughs in generative AI, he said. Generative AI relates to applications such as ChatGPT, which are able to generate content when prompted by users. How U.S. restrictions target AI. AI needs to be trained on huge amounts of data in order to work. Generative AI is based on the so-called large language models, meaning it is trained on huge amounts of language models. Um, huge amounts of language in order to understand or respond to prompts from users. The processing of the data requires a large amount of computing power that is powered by specific semiconductors, such as the one sold by the US firm NVIDIA, which is seen as the market leader in such chips. Part of the US current restrictions aim to cut China off from some of NVIDIA's key chips, which in turn could hamper China's AI development. Now here you can see some links that you can look if you want some further information about other notable stories. Now, Washington is also carrying out an outbound investment review, which could put rules in place for American investment into foreign companies. Well, the upcoming outbound investment review executive order will include its restriction on U.S. investments on AI-related technologies, and this will be a major indication of the direction of U.S. technology controls in the final 2 years of the Biden administration. Trelio said. China's generative AI push. ChatGPT, developed by American firm OpenAI, has taken the world by storm and sparked somewhat of an AI arms race between U.S. technology companies, including Microsoft, which is an investor, and Alphabet. Chinese technology giants have taken note. Over the past few months, Chinese technology giants from Baidu to Alibaba have announced plans and launched trials for their own ChatGPT rivals. Now, I'll enclose the link where you can actually watch this video. This will go into more depth. Okay. Now, China sees AI development as a strategic priority. Chinese regulators have brought in regulations around certain aspects of AI development so that technology adheres to Beijing's strict internet rules, but the government is still keen to boost domestic industry. Even as the U.S. looks to restrict China's access to key AI chips, Alibaba and Baidu have been designing their own semiconductors. While there hasn't been any impact on these chips from U.S. sanctions so far, it is an area that the government and tech firms will be watching closely. Blinken-Xi meeting unlikely to change much. Beijing has accused the U.S. of violating international trade rules through its sanctions and said the curbs on China's chip industry amount to, quote, bullying. Washington maintains its moves are in the interest of national security and targeting specific sensitive technologies. The thing is, every country has a right to make these policies. Okay? Just like in China, they have policies, and every other country they have policies. The thing is, when a country can't get an advantage or can't get something that the other country has, then of course they're going to complain and say it's not fair. Well, unfortunately, this is U.S. This is how things are. Just like in China, they like to say, "Well, this is China," blah blah, and it's like, guess what? Countries have a right to make their policies. China hasn't retaliated much. However, last month, Chinese regulators barred operators of, quote, critical information infrastructure, unquote, from buying chips from the U.S. firm Micron, claiming the company's product failed its network security review, which I highly doubt. If it was so bad, then how come they're buying from here? And why would they wait until they made this restriction to say this? Oh, it's very suspicious. You see, they can say anything failed it, but where's the proof? And then the other thing is, that's one thing to consider, where's the proof? Do you believe it or not, that's up to you. Second thing is, the timing also relevant to what's happening because things don't just happen for no reason. So I'll leave you to come to your own conclusions about what that means and what the implications are, at least to you. But all I can say is it's suspicious, okay, as a minimum, at the very minimum. Technology wasn't spoken about in public too much when Blinken recently met with China's Xi, but the two sides no doubt discussed it. Curlio told CNBC that U.S. likely raised issue about the treatment of micron, while China has brought up export controls. So here's the thing: is they want to buy chips and stuff from other companies, but the thing is, by them putting restrictions on things, they can just say, okay, we're just not going to sell to China. We'll sell to someone else. Not a problem. You know what I mean? And of course, there's other sectors that need chips too. So it's not like they have a problem selling the chips. So, quote, Beijing views the package, uh, meaning export controls, and the U.S. Chips and Science Act as a one-two punch designed to decouple China's semiconductor industry from the global semiconductor ecosystem. Ferlio said. However, two sides are in somewhat of a stalemate. Here we have another article. This is in regards to German ambassador to China discuss the concept of de-risking. Um, so I'll let you watch that as well, and I think I will watch that. Blinken spoke about the areas of cooperation between the U.S. and China, such as the climate crisis and the economy. But advanced technology is one area the two nations remain in competition. But at the same time, as I said, it's not in our interest to provide technology to China that could be used against us. Lincoln said on Monday. That's a very blunt, honest statement. Okay, a country can deny all they want, doesn't make it not true. Okay, now it doesn't make it true just because someone says they're going to use it for nefarious purposes or malignant purposes, but I don't believe somebody, especially when they don't. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a country, a person, or whoever. If they have a bad reputation, and if they've shown otherwise historically that they don't live up to their promises, why should I believe them? It's a fair thing to expect from people. Well, what China wants, the U.S. isn't going to give, like opening up the chip ecosystem to Beijing or not scrutinizing Chinese investment in U.S. technology. As said, the U.S.-China battle for technology supremacy is about to enter its prime time, unquote. Unlike the previous flashpoints like 5G or TikTok, both sides still believe differences could be patched over. Now, such ideas are politically dead. The chasm between the U.S. and China is expanding so much, and neither superpower wants to bridge the differences. Well, from what my understanding from a person who's lived in China, it's all about face. You never want to give in because they'll lose face. U.S. also doesn't want to give in because they don't want to give them what they want. So it's for two different reasons, based upon their interest and also based upon social, cultural influence as well, such as leaders don't want to appear to be a certain way as to not lose face. So that's basically what it is. All right. Now let's talk about the second article. Now this is about productivity and manufacturing from India, specifically electronics manufacturing. Now, before we continue with the article, I do want to reiterate that the purpose of this review is for review, information, informational, and educational purposes, not to take credit for the intellectual property, which is this article. The full credit of the intellectual property of this article goes to CNBC TV 18 and also the author, which is Ashmit Kumar. Now here you can see a video in which that you're welcome to watch the video. I will include the links to both of these articles. And for part one, if you haven't watched that, please watch that before you watch this. But actually, technically, you can watch that after this. It's okay. I will also include the links to those articles as well, which is I forgot to mention. Anyway, while the government, so let's continue with the article. What that said. While India may fall short of its $300 billion target for electronics manufacturing, And so, while government aimed to achieve exports worth 105 to 130 billion dollars, estimates suggest that the actual figure is expected to range between 58 and 69 billion. India's goal of achieving $300 billion in electronics manufacturing production by 2025 to 2026 is likely to remain unmet, according to industry insiders. In January 2022, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and that's MEIT, and capital Y, so capital M, lowercase EIT, uppercase Y, released a vision document outlining the target. However, estimates suggest India may only reach 225 billion in production by then. One of the significant factors contributing to the potential shortfalls of the non-participation Chinese manufacturers in exports. Following geopolitical tensions, India has taken measures to reduce reliance on Chinese technology, effectively putting self-imposed sanctions. Consequently, the absence of Chinese manufacturers in the export market is projected to result in a $26 billion deficit in mobile phone production. Now, this could possibly just be a short-term effect if they can get their own manufacturing going, but then that will no longer be an issue, or it won't even be relevant. The problem is that there's quite a bit of investing when you open a manufacturing plant, not only from a long-term contractual basis, but all the equipment, the overhead, and the constant materials and disposal of hazardous chemicals as well. Responding to the story, Electronics and Information Technology Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar tweeted that the government saw no reason or sign that India will underperform on the targets. Here we see a Twitter tweet. There's also another Twitter tweet, it looks like, from the same one here, CNBC TV 118. Yeah, it's just 118. The article goes on to say that the electronics industry in India is grappling with a significant shortfall in domestic demand. The majority of IT hardware consumed in the country is imported, indicating a lack of progress in domestic manufacturing. You notice how the publisher put domestic manufacturing as underlined, highlighting the point. This challenge has resulted in a depressed manufacturing sector and hindered the nation's ability to meet its ambitious production targets. Although the situation appears daunting, there are some positive indications with specific sectors. Consumer electronics, wearables, and automotive electronics have demonstrated robust performance and are contributing to the overall growth of the industry. However, the production of electronic components for white goods, particularly LED technology, is not receiving adequate support from the production-linked incentive scheme. To address the industry, experts suggest the need for independent PLI programs specifically targeting electronic components. In addition to falling short in the manufacturing production, India is also facing challenges in meeting its electronics export targets. While the government aimed at achieving exports worth 105 to 130 billion, estimates suggest the actual figure is expected to range between 58 to and 69 billion dollars. The discrepancy highlights the need for comprehensive evaluation of current export strategies and the identification of measures to bolster India's position in the global market. It is essential to note that these assessments were made before the recent revision of the PLI scheme for IT hardware. That about does it for this article. There are much more links you can look at other articles from this website, but I'm specifically referring to only this article. Now, I'd like to post a question to you. What do you think of this situation? Is there do you think India will quickly solve its own problem? What do you think the cause of the problem is? What do you think the solution to the problem is? You're welcome to tell me that in the comments. Keep in mind that the purpose here is for constructive dialogue, not for making derogatory comments or threatening comments. Okay? This is for the progression of discussion to come up with solutions, which is how people come up with solutions in a civilized world is that we discuss things to come up with solutions by suggesting different viewpoints and different ways of doing it, and then assessing all the viewpoints and then coming to a conclusion, and then implementing a standard in which that we're going to use. Do you understand? Okay. Now, that is part 2 of my daily news series. What I will do is I'll have part 1 immediately released that you can watch now. Part 2 will be released tomorrow morning. I'll schedule it for tomorrow morning. Now, mainly because I won't have as much time tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll be working on doing a lecture in principles of marketing. Okay, so anyway, with that said, I'd like to thank you for watching the video. Please click like on the video, that way I'll be pushing the algorithm and more people will be able to watch this video and be informed about the news, as that is the purpose of this. It is not to take credit for the intellectual property, but just to communicate and report on what is shown in the public domain, which is the key word, public domain. Now, if you haven't already, please click subscribe, that way you'll have access to all my videos. And also, if you haven't already, please click the bell button, that way you'll be notified of all future videos. And I would like to thank you for watching the video. I'd like to wish you a great evening. Take care, and I'll talk to you